I think we'll get started and kick things off. Just a notice to all, we'll record this session and ensure it's posted online for future reference. Good evening, my name is Kevin McCabe of the Battery Park City Authority. Thank you all for joining us as we host our inaugural ReadyBPC event. As you may be aware, ReadyBPC is identified as a priority in our strategic plan as an effort to raise awareness of the existing tools and information residents can utilize to stay engaged and educated around risk awareness, preparedness, and disaster response. This evening, we are pleased to welcome Kevin Leung, Senior Program Manager of New York City Office of Emergency Management, who will lead this evening's presentation. Kevin.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me here. Again, my name is Kevin Leung. I am from New York City Emergency Management, and I'm the program manager for the Ready New York program here at NYC Emergency Management. So before we go anywhere, I'm just going to start some things off, just really telling you about who we are and what we do as an agency, what New York City Emergency Management does. And what we really want to do is help New Yorkers before, during, and after emergencies through preparedness, education, and response. And the agency really is responsible for coordinating all the different types of emergencies, emergency planning and response, and it happens in all different and various scales. We're staffed by more than 200 dedicated professionals with diverse backgrounds in areas of expertise, including individuals assigned from other city agencies, such as the police department, the fire department, the Department of Buildings, and etc. So we really rely on these people assigned from these agencies on their subject matter experts, and we want to be able to prepare New Yorkers the best way possible. And one of the most important parts of our mission is community engagement. We are really tasked with educating New Yorkers about preparing for all different types of disasters and emergencies. And we have multiple programs within our community engagement team to prepare you guys. We have the Ready New York program, which is the program that I'm in charge of. And really it's working with individual households and telling New Yorkers about the hazards that they may face, encourage residents to prepare for emergencies. We have an emergency response team or community emergency response team, which is really the volunteer segment of our community engagement bureau, really teaching volunteers in different neighborhoods on the steps on basic response skills such as fire safety, light search and rescue, disaster medical operations, traffic control, and really making sure that the community emergency response team is able to connect with the community and work with the community on all types of emergencies. We have our community preparedness program, which really works on a macro level, working with community centers and neighborhoods on emergency preparedness and volunteerism. And we also have our Partners in Preparedness program, which is helping organizations such as small businesses or large businesses really prepare for the different types of emergencies that may face businesses in a sense. So within your personal emergency preparedness plans, we always want to have 3 simple steps. We want to have the first step as in making a plan, the second, gathering supplies, and the third is staying informed. Overall, we always emphasize these 3 steps, but within each step, you always need to make sure that everything is suited to your needs. So the plans that you make is suitable for you and your family. The things that you need for supplies is also suitable for you and your family. People are different. And we'll go a little bit more into this towards the end of the presentation. Right now, we're gonna talk a little bit more about what is really affecting us at the moment. And that's gonna be heat and hurricanes. So heat. We are in an active heat wave right now. Most of the country is. I know the West Coast is not doing too well, but usually extreme heat is defined by temperatures that hover 10 degrees or more above the average temperature for the region. And they last for a prolonged period of time and is accompanied by high humidity. So today it was around 90-something degrees, but the heat index was about 100 and something, give or take. So it really is important to be prepared for heat. On warm summer days, the city can get as much as 10 degrees warmer than its surrounding areas. And that's because of the infrastructure. We're made up of asphalt, concrete, metal, things that are black, just trapping all the heat. And we're known as the urban heat island. And it really is making things a lot hotter than it usually is. And it could be, and you could definitely see this in parts of, say, if you take a stroll through Central Park, it's going to be a lot cooler there than you taking a stroll 15 blocks below that. And it's just because of the urban heat effect. So within extreme heats, there's multiple impacts. You have utility disruptions such as power outages, and those are more likely to happen during the hot summer months when a utility usage is at its peak. During these periods, intense electrical usage, such as on a high humid day, is high. People turning up their ACs, people staying at home, and we really want you to be prepared for that in case there is a utility disruption. We've all experienced this before in 2003, as well as multiple ones throughout the summertime in the past 15, 20 years. Most recently, the largest one, I believe, was the one on the Upper West Side near Carnegie Hall, etc., Columbus Circle. There was a pretty big one on the Upper West Side, I believe, in the summer of 2019. And that was a really rough one during the summertime as well. And some of the steps that you can take to prevent an outage can be setting your air conditioner to no lower than 78 degrees, relieving the pressure from the system, and only use your air conditioner when you're home. And if you want to cool your home, you can always set a timer that turns on no earlier than 30 minutes before you arrive back at home. Turning off non-essential appliances, and also having emergency supplies on hand in case of an outage. If you lose power, you always want to notify utility provider immediately so they can always support you and make sure that the power gets back on as soon as possible. So another extreme heat impact is people who are at most risk. Who are they? And usually it's people with chronic health conditions, the elderly, and people in a more vulnerable position, people who don't have air conditioning, and etc. And this population group has a really hard time responding to heat, and we need to be prepared for that. If you know people who are heavy drinkers, or use illicit drugs, we need to make sure that they are safe and they are okay by making sure that they have all the proper steps necessary to be prepared for an extreme heat when something like this does happen. And we want to be able to beat the heat. That's the most important thing. We want to be able to stay cool. We want to use an air conditioner during hot weather and heat emergencies. And if there aren't any, we also have the Home Energy Assistance Program, which provides people with who are in low-income, vulnerable populations the ability to receive an air conditioner from New York City and install for them. And there is a list of checks that you need to go through before you can receive this program, but it is another option for people who cannot own an air conditioner. Also, we also have our cooling centers. We want you to keep cool. We want you to make sure that everything is going to be okay. So we have cooling centers layered throughout the city, and they're open right now. And one of the most important things is we want to help our neighbors. You want to be able to check on neighbors and check on family members, especially if they are seniors, young children, and people with disabilities and access functional needs. We want to keep in touch by them with on the phone at least twice a day during heat waves, just to make sure that they are okay. And also, at the moment, we are still in a pandemic, and we want to avoid in-person visits just to protect everyone's health and the health of others. But seniors and others who may be sensitive to extreme heat should contact friends, neighbors, or relatives at least twice a day during the heat wave. And in New York City, most heat-related deaths occurred after exposure to heat in homes without air conditioners. And air conditioning is the best way to stay safe and healthy when it is hot outside. We don't ever want to leave children, pets, or those who require special care unattended, either at home or in a parked car during periods of intense summer heat. And heat illness is really, really serious. We want to know what the signs of heat illnesses are, so we're able to basically prepare for it and know how to take the right steps when something like this happens. So heat-related illnesses, there's really two steps to it. The first is a heat stroke, and the second one is heat exhaustion. Heat stroke usually occurs when the body temperature rises quickly, which can cause death. We want to call 911 immediately or go to emergency if you or someone you know has the following symptoms: hot or dry skin, confusion, hallucinations, disorientation, nausea or vomiting, losing consciousness or being unresponsive, trouble breathing. They have a fast or strong pulse. It's just like your heart rate is going crazy, weakness and dizziness. These are really the signs of a heat stroke. And if you see any of this within yourself or a family member or friend, make sure that you need to call 911 immediately, because heat is actually one of the biggest emergency killers, more so than anything else, because it's such it's a slow but very excruciating way of being in an emergency. We experience it all the time, so we don't think too much about it. But heat preparedness is actually one of the most important things that we here at New York City Emergency Management want to get out. And heat exhaustion. Heat exhaustion is something where you're just staying in a hot place for a prolonged amount of time. One of our biggest recommendations when you are heat exhausted, you want to get to a cool place and remove extra clothes and drink lots of water. And some of the symptoms that can cause heat exhaustion is heavy sweating, cold, clammy skin, muscle cramps, lightheadedness or feeling faint, headache, decreased energy, or loss of appetite or nausea. And really for this is we want to get somewhere cool. That's the most important thing. You want to drink lots of water, keep hydrated, and make sure that your body temperature is not too high. And with all that said, we have many ways to support New Yorkers here at New York City. New York City government really makes sure and wants to help all different types of people to make sure that they are cool and they are safe when a heat emergency does happen. As I was talking earlier, we do have our cooling centers provided by New York City. These are hundreds of different cooling centers located throughout New York City that has that is a school, that could be an older adult center, it could be a church, or it could be other community engagement centers. And we also have the Cool It NYC program, which is a citywide plan to increase the amount of cooling features available to the public during heat emergencies. And this is to decrease gatherings and encourage socially distant gatherings during heat emergencies, because we are still in this pandemic. We do have spray showers and misting stations, drinking fountains. We want to encourage parks as a great place to go because it does have tree cover. And New Yorkers can also beat the heat by obtaining a spray cap from their local firehouse. Even though applicants must be 18 years or older and complete a form to obtain the hydrant cap, we want people to make sure that if you are outside and are having fun, that you do have a spray cap for a fire hydrant, because fire hydrants waste thousands of gallons of water per minute if not properly managed. And then also talking more about the cooling centers, if you need to find a cooling center, you can always go to the Cooling Center Finder online or contact 311. You can find out where the cooling centers are, and there's one open near you. But if you do go to a cooling center, we do still have socially distant rules and pandemic rules in place. So you would need to wear a face covering. You would need to keep physical distance between yourself and others. And these cooling centers are managed by agency partners who determine the site's hours. So it could depend and vary on different sites. And even though we are winding down in this pandemic and things are getting a lot better, and as we all see, New York City is getting a lot more normal again, we are still in a COVID-19 pandemic. The virus that causes the COVID-19 will not enter your home through an air conditioner or an open window, because the virus is usually spread to people who are in close contact within about 6 feet or so with the person who has COVID-19. So it's spread through droplets that are sprayed when a person coughs or sneezes, or when they sing or talk. So if someone with COVID-19 is in your home, opening the windows can increase air circulation that may help stop the spread of COVID-19 by reducing the amount of virus in the air. But during heat waves, opening windows is not enough to keep cool. So make sure that you and your family are properly prepared. And if someone does have COVID-19, please make sure that you are properly isolated from the rest of your family. So after heat during the summer months, we also have hurricanes. And hurricanes in New York City are interesting. They don't happen often, but when they do, they seem to hit us pretty hard and pretty fast. So the hurricane in New York City is usually from June 1st to November 30th, even though the highest potential for hurricanes in New York City occurs from August to October. And the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration really predicts about a higher or above normal season with about 13 to 19 named storms this year, which about 6 to 10 could become hurricanes, including 3 to 6 major hurricanes. An average season produces about 12 named storms, which 6 becomes hurricanes, including 3 major hurricanes. So we're basically in the thick of things right now. And hurricanes can really come in all different shapes and sizes. As we all know, Hurricane Sandy brought about a lot of flooding, a lot of power outages, and a lot of things were destroyed due to the water. But last year we had Hurricane Isaias, which really didn't bring too much rain, but brought in a lot of wind. And that really caused a lot of power outages and a lot of dangerous objects floating around within the city due to the high winds. So impacts of hurricanes can come in all different shapes and sizes. It could be wind, it could be rain, it could be flooding. It could also be utility disruptions, because during Hurricane Sandy, we saw a lot of power outages within the Battery Park City area, within Lower East Side, and anything really below 59th Street was a different city compared to anything above that. With winds and hurricanes, with sustained winds of 74 miles per hour or greater, hurricanes may damage buildings, topple trees, and turn loose objects into deadly projectiles. Power lines may be affected from heavy winds, and you also will experience power outages from that. And hurricanes and some tropical storms usually produce widespread rainfall, about 6 to 12 inches or more, and often resulting in severe flooding. So again, flooding, wind, utilities disruptions, these are all the different impacts of hurricanes. So when a hurricane does happen or a coastal storm does happen and hit New York City, we always want to prompt people to be prepared. We want people to evacuate if they do live in a hurricane evacuation zone. And we want people to know that there are hurricane evacuation centers available for everyone in order to be safe from a hurricane. So in New York City, we have our Know Your Zone program, which is the city is divided into 6 different hurricane evacuation zones, zones 1 through 6. And zones actually just changed this year. So if you think you lived in zone 2 or 3, your zone might have changed. And about 3 million New Yorkers live in these zones. And it's easy to find out what zone you live in. All you have to do is call 311 or visit nyc.gov/knowyourzone. And areas of the city are subject to storm surge flooding. And this is really important to know that where your hurricane evacuation zones are and where your hurricane evacuation centers are located. And if you have to evacuate, you always want to make a plan to stay with friends first, or family outside of the hurricane evacuation zone, and you want to make sure that you're socially distanced from them. But also, the reason for that is hurricane evacuation centers are very basic and bare. It doesn't have the comforts of, say, a friend or family's home if you do have that opportunity to stay there. If you don't, a hurricane evacuation center is also a great way to stay safe and stay away from any type of hazards that a hurricane may present to you or your family. And again, COVID-19 is still going through the city, and we still have plans in place during hurricane season. So New York City has about 60 hurricane evacuation centers available outside of hurricane zones, should individuals need to evacuate for a hurricane. But we also have social distancing guidelines and face covering social distancing guidelines in place at all hurricane evacuation centers if some people do feel unsafe because of it. Centers will practice social distancing. Face masks will be mandatory, as well as, oh, I'm sorry, what just happened? There we go. Sorry about that. And individuals are encouraged to bring their own masks and hand sanitizers, but masks and hand sanitizers will be passed out if people don't have any. And also there will be increased cleaning practices due to Department of Health and Mental Hygiene's policies, and all the custodial staff will clean according to the COVID-19 guidance. So within heat and within hurricanes during the summer months going into fall, we want to also know how to be prepared. And by being prepared is by knowing what to do before an emergency. And that's the most important thing, is planning and talking to your family before an emergency because of any type of things that may happen during an emergency. The first and most important thing is you always want to create an emergency support network. You want to be able to talk and have a list of people that you are able to talk to, go to, and support you in case of an emergency. We want to write down important health and life-saving information, because when an emergency does happen, you may not know the medication you take or the medication your children take off the top of your head, because some medications do have very weird and hard names to pronounce. And within your plan, you always want to make sure that you have a good communication plan. You want to know how to contact each other in case power lines go out and you need to either pass messages along via a third party. You want to know how and where you need to meet in case you're not able to go home. So all these things you want to know how to do. You want to make a plan that suits your needs and make sure that your family knows what to do before an emergency happens. And as we move forward in gathering supplies, besides from the most obvious of how to pack a go bag, how to put an emergency supply kit, these supplies are really, really important, and they need to be catered to you and your family. Having a go bag, which is a bag ready to go at any time because of an emergency and you need to evacuate, is good. But what goes in that go bag? If you have children, you might need toys. If you have someone that has different needs, such as a dietary need or something like that, you also want to make sure that he or she has the right foods that can sustain them when an emergency happens and you have to leave your home. We need to think of special considerations of if someone have low vision and they need a cane within their go bag, that's something you need to pack. Or if someone wears glasses, you need to have extra glasses for that. So these are a lot of the things that you need to think about. Is the supplies that you see online that I can tell you are great, but what are the supplies that you really, really need to make sure that you and your family are safe? And as we move forward, we know how to make a plan. We know how to get informed. We want to also know, or we know how to gather supplies. We also want to know how to stay informed. Information is one of the most important things that we have in terms of being prepared for any type of emergency. We want to know that what is coming, how do we beat it, and how do we get more information to stay better prepared. And New York City provides a lot of different ways to get informed and be prepared. During summer months, we have our Beat the Heat awareness campaign. We have our cooling center finders, where you can find different cooling centers to stay cool if you don't want to stay at home. We also have the Notify NYC program, which is New York City's official emergency communications program, really telling you about the different emergencies and different things that are happening throughout the city in a really up-to-date live manner. It's a free app that you can download for Apple or Android. If you don't want to download it and you want to receive text, you can also do that. We also email, we fax it, we also call. It's an automated message, but we would call. And it's just a lot of different ways to get free information and the most up-to-date information about all the different things that are happening in New York City right to your phone. And we also have the Ready NYC app. It is an emergency plan that basically you can download on your phone, and it shows you what are the different steps to be prepared. So within that, knowing how to make a plan, knowing how to gather supplies, and knowing how to stay informed allows you to stay prepared, especially during these months with heat, hurricane, and all different things that are happening at the same time. It's very, very important to stay prepared. So moving forward, if anyone has any questions right now, I'll be more than happy to answer it, and we can go from there.
Hi, Kevin. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Josh. I live down in Battery Park City.
Okay.
I have a question related to what appears to be a lot of increased police traffic on the harbor. We overlook the New York Harbor.
Mhm.
And the last few weeks, there's been just a lot of police boats, search helicopters. There's even been increased military flyovers. And so my wife and I are just curious to know whether this is something we should be concerned about.
No, I mean, during these times, a lot more accidents do happen in the water, just because people are going on jet skis, or I actually don't even know the proper name. It's not jet skis. It's like the jet motorcycles, and people are kayaking, people are doing paddle boards out in the water. So it is to be expected that there's going to be more activity. In terms of the military flyovers, I'm not too sure about that. I don't know what's going on for that. There hasn't been anything too concerning for us that's coming into emergency management, but we do know that there's been a lot more accidents lately, and also the city's opening back up, so people want to do more things, and they might be a little bit more reckless on it as well. Just because that's the nature of people sometimes, but yeah, there is a lot more activity because there are a lot more things going on within the water as well. It should be slowing down once September, October rolls around, but I don't suspect that that's going to slow down anytime soon because of things are opening back up and people are trying to do as many things as possible within the city as well.
Okay, thank you for your help.
No problem.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'd like to know how people are supposed to get from their apartments to an emergency shelter in the case of a real emergency such as a hurricane.
Yeah.
Especially if they happen to be alone and not have any family and don't drive and don't have a car and have perhaps some physical problems. How are they supposed to even get to a shelter?
Yeah. That's actually a great question. So all these hurricane evacuation shelters, sorry, let me stop my screen here so you can see my full face. Yeah, many of these hurricane evacuation shelters, they do have a lot of leeway. So they'll open days before a storm is even going to come hit us, such as I can give a great example for Hurricane Sandy. And I remember Hurricane Sandy perfectly. It was a gorgeous 2-3 days before anything happened at all. So hurricane shelters are open before hurricanes do hit New York City. That way people can have the amount of time, because we do close down subways, so people might not be able to travel during a hurricane. But also, we also have our homebound evacuation plans, where basically people who are, they can't leave their home, they can't really get to a hurricane evacuation center because of X, Y, and Z. We do have a public transportation plan to support these individuals to bring them to a hurricane evacuation center. And all they have to do is either call 911 or call 311, and they'll be routed to the call center, and they'll basically determine what tier they're in. If they're not able to take the subway because, say, they have a mobility issue, they'll be able to send a support unit with a car and bring them to a hurricane evacuation center. To something as serious as an individual can't even get out of their bed, then they'll have to send an ambulance with the fire department to make sure that that person is properly evacuated and supported on their way to any type of hurricane evacuation center, or if a hospital if need be, because of the condition that he or she is in. But also planning on where you need to go and knowing where your hurricane evacuation center is before a hurricane happens is also very important. That way that you do know how to get there if you are by yourself, or maybe informing your neighbors or someone that you are close with if you don't have family member around. to know what your plan is and if they do need to support you. I hope that answers it. I could also explain more, but I don't know what else to say for that.
Any other questions? Okay, well, if that is it, Kevin, I'd like to thank you again for a informative conversation and dialogue. As I previously mentioned, we'll ensure this presentation is posted online via our website,
Yeah.
as long as your contact information in case folks have any follow-up questions.
Yeah, definitely. Again, if you guys need anything, please shoot me an email. If you don't have my email, you can always email Kevin or anyone on the team, and they'll definitely put me in contact with you guys if you have any questions. But also, the best way to get information is by calling 311. They definitely know more than I do. That's all I have to say. They have information from all over the city. So yeah, thank you so much for having me, and thank you again for joining, and hope to talk to everyone soon.
Thanks, Kevin. We look forward to keeping this dialogue continuing. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.